welcome to the Pan IIT panel. Digital transformation, technology disruption, innovation. We have all heard these terms in the boardroom conversations, but how should we react? Welcome to the Pan IIT panel on Innovate or Die, the role of technology leaders in creating new business opportunities. My name is Prit Banerjee and I am CTO at ANSYS. And it's my honor to present to you a distinguished panel of CTOs of leading companies who are facing this challenge every day. For many of us, the COVID-19 pandemic has fundamentally changed the way we think, whether about the choices we make in our personal lives or on how we run our business. The threat of disruption from a health crisis like this pandemic is unusual. But as business leaders, we see disruptions in technology on a regular basis. Typically, markets become disrupted when visionaries recognize a disruption, then take advantage of the series of technology advances. These innovators take these new tools or new ways of thinking, or perhaps combine them together and help them coalesce into something transformative. In the process, entire industries are disrupted and fortunes can be made. And now we are at the cusp of the next disruption, that of digital transformation. This disruption can fundamentally change the way we think about innovation. It will level the playing field for startups trying to break into the market against larger, more established companies. It will help established companies to avoid being disrupted, and it will spark and create products once thought unbuildable. Now, digital transformation is a set of digital technologies such as cloud, mobility, IoT, data analytics, AI, machine learning, additive manufacturing, to radically improve the performance of a business, to increase the reach of the enterprise, to drive real business transformations, improving customer experiences or more efficient operational processes. Let's look at some examples. In customer relationship management, when Salesforce came up with a cloud-first approach, they essentially displaced the on-premise CRM from, say, Oracle. With supply chain management, NetSuite came up with a cloud-first approach that displaced SAP's CRM system, SCM systems. Workday did the same for workflows management. Amazon, AWS, Microsoft Azure did this in the cloud area. Apple iPhone, we all use this. Samsung tablets, these are in the mobility area. In the industrial IoT, GE Predix with their Predix platform, ABB Ability and so on. Social networks like Facebook and Instagram. All of these technologies have essentially disrupted our businesses. Now let's look at entire industries, like the auto industry getting disrupted by Tesla with the electrification, with Waymo with self-driving cars, with Uber and Lyft for ride sharing, hotel industry getting disrupted by Airbnb, energy industry getting disrupted by Tesla and SolarCity, manufacturing getting disrupted by, say, Foghorn and Sight Machine, education getting disrupted by MOOCs like edX and Coursera. So in almost every industry, you see such transformations happening. In fact, the entire world is moving towards everything as a service. So we all know of examples of companies that did not see the transformation coming and died. Kodak, disrupted by digital imaging. Blockbuster by online movie streaming. Nokia by digital cell phones. Yet companies like Apple reinvented themselves from selling Macs to selling iPhones and iPads and Apple Music. So with today's disruption, how do companies innovate or die? The next 70 minutes, the CTO panel will be on Innovate or Die, the role of technology leaders, such as the CTOs that we have on the panel, to create new business opportunities. We have an outstanding set of panelists who will share thoughts on this topic. And it is my pleasure to introduce my panelists. So again, I am Prit Banerjee. I'm going to be the moderator. I am CTO at ANSYS. I am also a graduate of IIT Kharagpur, and I've served about 20 years in academia at the University of Illinois Northwestern, and then I was CTO at ABB and Schneider before coming to ANSYS. I would like to first ask Sujit Chan to introduce himself and his role at Rockwell. Sujit?
Thank you, Prith. Real pleasure to be here on this panel. I'm Sujit Chan, Chief Technology Officer for Rockwell Automation. My responsibilities at Rockwell include traditional CTO responsibilities such as advanced technology development, owning technology roadmaps for the company, and driving innovation. In addition to that, I also have global business development as well as product architectural evolution for the company. Rockwell Automation is roughly a $7 billion business. We are the world's largest company that is dedicated to industrial automation and information. We are 116 years old, so that'll tell you a little bit about how the company has survived over the years. And to survive 116 years, the company had to reinvent itself many, many times. And just most recently, in the last decade or so, we shifted to becoming more of a technology company from being a manufacturer of 300,000 plus products. Now we're going through another shift, which we will talk about as we progress in the panel. So Britt, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And let's hear from Suresh now, CTO at Honeywell.
Thanks, Fred. It's my privilege to be with this group today. I'm Suresh Venkatra. I've been with the company Honeywell for 25 years. I'm a Chief Technology Officer for Honeywell, responsible for, as Sujit said, from research and technology, advanced concept development, product engineering, and also for transformation. Transformation is two different ways. We are transforming our company from industrial to software industrial, which means digital technologies that are taking over and transforming our products into connected products, and the businesses are changing. And I also have the responsibility to really drive the digital R&D thread. And that's where we work with ANSYS and Fritz organization. And happy to be here. Over to you, Fritz.
Thank you very much. And now let's hear from Malik Thadani, who's the CTO at Eriksson. Malik?
Thank you, Preet. It's my honor to be with you and the rest of the CTOs. I'm also a graduate of IIT Chennai. It's coming home, speaking with my alumni here. So I'm Malik Thadani. I'm a CTO of Eriksson Silicon Valley. Just like my colleagues, I've got a responsibility of setting the technology direction and strategy for the company. In addition, since 5G is getting into Industry 4.0, I'm also responsible for co-creation, working with our ecosystem partners such as Sujit's team from Rockwell and Honeywell from Suresh team. In addition to co-creation, I'm also looking at the long-term research, engaging with the universities in the United States and Canada. So just a bit of background about Eriksson. Eriksson is about 144 years old company, and we are the leaders in mobile networking infrastructure. And we are now looking at 5G and beyond, including 6G technologies, working with some of our colleagues on the panel, as well as the alumni from IIT and the students across the world.
Thank you very much, Malik. And finally, we have Sudhi Bangalore, CTO of Global Operations at Stanley Black & Decker. Sudhi?
Thank you, Prit. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm excited to be part of this panel. And I am the CTO for Global Ops for Stanley Black & Decker. Stanley Black & Decker is a really traditional legacy manufacturing company. We're the largest tool manufacturer in the world. Have been in business for over 177 years. As Sujit said, talk about longevity and talk about what it took for companies like ours to have reinvented many, many times and have continued to thrive. A couple of critical points about Stanley Black & Decker that's relevant to this discussion. As I mentioned, we are a legacy tool manufacturer, and we also serve in the industrial segment and the security segments in the world. And so that's our business. But what sets us apart is we absolutely believe that manufacturing is an advantage. While many companies have taken manufacturing outside their four walls and outsourced it in parts pieces, we actually believe that it is an advantage. And to that end, we are transforming not only the way we continue to evolve and innovate our products, equally important, we are also innovating the landscape of our factories and the larger supply chain. So I'm actually the CTO for global operations, which is a tweak to the traditional CTO role. So I'm responsible for the complete transformation of our own landscape, but most important, I'm also responsible for transforming the way our people work in our factories. That's what makes my job very exciting. I've been in this business for over 26 years. I'm excited to be part of this panel, and I look forward to a vibrant discussion in terms of how, from my perspective, we are using technology, both startups and larger companies. We're partners with ANSYS and as well as Rockwell. And so we partner with big companies, small companies, and we're doing some wonderful things in terms of innovating how we actually manufacture and how we serve as a benchmark the larger industrial community. So I look forward to a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sudhi. And so I hope the attendees understand we have a truly high-powered panel. I mean, if anybody can talk to the topic of innovate or die and sort of what technology leaders are thinking in terms of creating new business opportunities, we couldn't have anybody better than this group of friends that we have. So, so the first question I want to ask the panel is around the challenges and opportunities of digital transformation. I kind of introduced, I said that we are at the cusp of disruption, that is digital transformation. And digital transformation is basically using digital technologies such as cloud, mobility, IoT, AI, machine learning, etc., additive manufacturing, and so on, right? So in each of your companies, so I'm going to start with you, Suresh. Just talk to us about at Honeywell, how are you looking at the challenge and the opportunity of transforming Honeywell? Suresh?
Sure. We are transforming our company, which I said we are moving from an industrial to a software industrial company. As part of it, you need to understand our core. Honeywell used to be a control systems company for the last 100 years. We just finished 100 years since inception. Now you're virtualizing the control system. When you talk about digital, connected, IoT, what are we doing? We are trying to virtualize the control systems. To virtualize the control system, the fundamental building blocks that we're trying to do right now is connect back to your install base. So when you connect back to your install base, the biggest issue and challenge that every company is going through is access to data. So you get into a space around data access rights, who owns data, data privacy, and then security around it. So number one is data. Once you get data, then the whole challenge around, okay, how do I build my models? How do I drive the control system on the cloud? How do I really deal with latency? What's the connectivity architecture? And then the third one is you have completely untapped space, which we call an extended new set of processes and offerings. How do we do it? So these are the 3 or 4 technology building blocks we are evolving as a company. But the biggest challenge the industry is still facing is a new set of business model. How do we really take our traditional business where we've been a B2B company? How do we really evolve ourselves into a recurring revenue software businesses? And I think companies like ANSYS and PTCs and others have actually shown the path. How do we do so in an industrial environment setup? So if I need to really lean it down, technology challenges, how do we need to fix it? I think we are navigating well. I think we are really looking at a business model, go-to-market, a new approach of driving the recurring revenue businesses. That's where we are learning and evolving at this juncture. And that's going to be critical for all of us. Back to you, Prit.
Fantastic. So, so Malik, you're at Eriksson. Eriksson is one of the companies that are creating these digital technologies. You've gone through the journey of 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and now I hear that you are going on 6G. So you are actually creating those digital technologies and disrupting yourself. So Malik, why don't you talk about the challenges and opportunities of DT at Eriksson?
Yes, I think Suresh touched upon the technology, service, and business model transformation, right? I think we are facing the same thing from Eriksson's point of view. Um, you know, what I see from a 5G point of view is that the classic convergence of connectivity, compute, and control driven by 5G, edge compute, and AI. So that confluence of those technologies coming together to realize ultra low latency mission critical applications to realize the industry 4.0. So that's causing the way we architect the network, the way we implement DevOps, the way we implement CI/CD pipeline. So it is having a fundamental impact on our software development methodologies, moving from waterfall methods to more agile. It's also having fundamental impact on the way we roll out our network functions in the cloud native world, and how all these pieces are coming together as a system and cutting across not only telcos, but also cloud providers and industrial verticals. I think that's the biggest technology transformation we are seeing in our generations. Then on top of that, what's the service and business models, as Suresh touched upon. So that's what we are seeing, not only just providing the connectivity, but integrating compute and control systems on top of that is a major transformation from our point of view.
Thank you very much, Malik. And so now we are going to go to Sudhi, who kind of touched on what he is doing, right? He's a CTO of global operations. So in terms of operations, supply chain, manufacturing, and so on. Sudhi, why don't you talk about some of the challenges of digital transformation?
Thank you, Preet. So the challenges of digital transformation when it comes to operations, especially when we have a landscape that's made up of very traditional legacy factories, meaning old technology, not really connected, etc., all the way to brand new factories and everything in between. That is the first challenge. How do you enable operations that are 50, 60, 70 years old and then bring them up to current standards, as Malik pointed out? So that in itself is a huge daunting challenge because it takes time and effort to connect these assets. So I call it the burdens of rusty, lazy assets. And so that is challenge number one. But the harder challenge really is to transform yourself while keeping the people at the center. It's an easier challenge to speak of than actually do it, because end of the day you can do the transformation, keeping people at the center when you have this people ready to consume transformation and technology. But in our case, if you look at a lot of the folks in our assembly and other operations, these folks don't have advanced degrees. So being able to take the larger, older population and still make them relevant, but more important than relevant, how do you enable upskilling and reskilling and enable new career paths is a major challenge, and it's actually a major opportunity. So if I were to summarize, it's the challenge of the rusty, lazy asset syndrome, as well as how do you now make sure that we truly keep people at the center and enable new path, new ways of working and transform their performance and their livelihood. So that's the way I would summarize our big challenges.
Thank you, Sujit. So Sujit, now let's go to you last in terms of challenges of digital transformation. You mentioned it in your introduction, but let's go deeper.
Okay, well, before we talk about challenges, let's talk about opportunities. And to highlight opportunities, I'll give you a concrete example. At Rockwell Automation, we built what we call a showcase factory at our headquarters in Milwaukee. And the purpose of the showcase factory was to demonstrate the value of digital transformation and also to assess where the business value propositions are as you enable digital transformation. So our goal was to build a factory that produced about 2 million contactors annually, and also made 600 different variations of these contactors with zero setup time. So from the concept of this factory to implementation, we did that in about 9 months. How did we do it? Starting with the machine design, robotics, and all the different machines that make up the contactors, we used browser-based computer-aided design, which is new. So when you have browser-based CAD, you can have collaboration between engineers in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and engineers in Italy that are working on machines, on the special machines. They can have real-time collaboration, which we never had before. That was great. Once we had the machines designed, we went from design to commissioning very quickly by using simulation and emulation. The simulation provided by ANSYS was instrumental in doing that. That saved us roughly 50% of the time in commissioning the factory. Once the factory was commissioned, it was data enabled. We started collecting data and moved the data into the cloud for analytics to reduce downtime, to predict and optimize the performance of this factory. So it's a running factory now. It runs by, it's an autonomous factory with really no people. And it highlights the value of digital transformation. The orders come into SAP, into ERP. They're automatically processed, automatically scheduled, and we can make an order of one contactor, for a special contactor for a customer. Couldn't do this before. So bottom line is, opportunities with digital transformation are enormous. Rather than highlighting the technologies like cloud, AI, ML, et cetera, I tried to highlight the advantages or the benefits, the business value of digital transformation. That's where you need to start, because today many companies are focused on plumbing, on technologies, on looking at different AI, ML algorithms. That's a wrong place to start. If you start with the business value, you can accelerate digital transformation. Now, in terms of challenges, I think Sudhi was spot on. In manufacturing, we have tremendous amount of legacy out there, and also heterogeneous systems that don't talk to each other. So solving that problem is going to be difficult because digital transformation needs to be at scale. There are a lot of pilot projects that demonstrate value in a narrow area, but to scale becomes very difficult. So that's one of the challenges in deploying digital transformation across manufacturing, across industrial automation space.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sujit, for this great explanation. So now let's go into the next topic, which is at the core of our panel discussion, right? So it's about core innovation and disruptive innovation, right? So we all know that when I talked about Kodak missing the digital imaging market, it's not like Kodak did not know about digital imaging. They actually knew of digital imaging, yet they were making so much money in analog printing, analog imaging, it was hard for them to let go of the cash cow. And we kind of know where Kodak went. We also know that Apple, while they were creating the iPhone, they knew that it would kill their own iPod market, right? Because a phone had the music player also built in. But rather than having a disruptor, a startup coming with an iPhone, right? They just said, let me kill our own business, right? So those are the challenges that companies face. And as CTO, right, at least the product CTOs, I'm going to start with the product CTOs first, right? You're responsible for a portfolio of innovations on your core products and solutions, as well as new opportunities. How are you and your company balancing this trade-off, right? The R&D investment in new versus current products. How do you treat M&A, mergers and acquisitions to bring new technologies into companies? I'm going to start with you, Suresh, and then we'll kind of cycle through the others. So Suresh, your thoughts on core versus disruptive innovation.
It's timely, Preet. We just finished our annual plan and we presented to our company about our 2021 plan. The way we segmented our portfolio was NPI, that everybody knows, new product innovation, but predominantly if you get cannibalized, we call them as NPI replacement. And that I think every company would have 70, 80% because you got to do this to be in the business. Second, we call NPI new. That's completely a new SKU, new to the market. And then it's not like taking a current product into the new market, but that has to really drive your incremental growth. And anything from $0 to $100 million in 3 years, we call NPI new. Anything that crosses $100 million in 3 years, we call breakthrough innovation. And this is an area our chairman, the last 3-4 years, Darius Adamczyk, has really pushed it hard, because to prepare the company for the future, you got to bet on future that's breakthrough. Just to give you a top 4 or 5 example, you would have heard about it from a public domain. Quantum solution, we incubated for 8 years. Finally, we are out. We are pretty proud of our 10 qubit machine that is running with, we have 5 or 6 customers who are experimenting, building application, which we think that from 2025 and above, there will be a breakthrough ideas that will be building new application and use cases right there. Aerospace is starting to really develop what we call urban air mobility solution. We do really believe finally unmanned air vehicle taxiing logistics to start with, and people in the future. We created a separate business right there. A general manager with a cross-functional team. We believe that that would be our next major step. So similar to that, I think this time around, Preet, we have taken a bet close to around 10 in the area of energy, sustainability, autonomous systems, advanced compute like quantum, and then digital technology like what we call Honeywell Forge that will transform our core businesses. If we have been in a plant business, we want to create a connected plant portfolio business. If you've been in a building business, we want to really create a digital connected building portfolio. So we ended up our plan by segmenting to say, look, I think it's a CTO's job and the business's job to protect your core so that you're not eroding your core business, but organic growth. How much of the organic growth going to come from new to market NPI new to market breakthrough innovation? And that is also driving us to co-innovate and partner with many of them. And that many of them includes our venture companies that we have a portfolio, which we'll talk a little later. We have a number of startups, and then we are also co-creating with the customers. So this is going to be new Honeywell. You're going to see a lot more of breakthrough thinking, breakthrough businesses that will be incubating more and more as we progress. Back to you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Let's go to Malik now to talk about sort of how Eriksson is balancing the core and the disruptive.
Absolutely. Preet, I think just like Suresh said, we have got, we look at our strategy across 3 dimensions, right? The first one is how do we protect our core business, but at the same time, how do we handle these disruptors, such as moving towards software-defined networking, moving towards more cloud native. Traditionally, our business has been more hardware focused. How do we transition more towards software-defined? So that's one aspect of it. Then the second one is looking at moving into adjacent markets to increase the TAM, such as taking 5G into enterprises and industrial verticals. That's the second horizon we look at. And the third horizon is how do we go into more new market segments in a transformative way. So those are the 3 sort of time horizons, protect and grow existing market share, extend the TAM by moving into adjacent markets. Third one is, more in a transformative way, enter into new markets. So with that, the way we balance is that especially in the core markets, we got to think about not only taking our hardware into software transition, such as we recently announced Cloud RAN as an example, where we had to balance between the core market as well as the software-defined way of doing things. But at the same time, we got to think about what next. Because when we move from one radio to next radio generation technologies, those technologies are completely different in terms of modulation schemes. So we got to basically not only think about 5G, but invest for 6G now itself, because it has got massive ecosystem of players to align with. So it's a very interesting thing on how we invest on core versus disruptive versus new markets. And our strategy looks at all three components. And in terms of organic versus inorganic, we look at inorganic when we don't have core competencies. If it is a new market segment where we want to get some install base. For example, we acquired a company called Cradlepoint recently because we wanted to take 5G into enterprise segment. So we realized that that's a way to enter into enterprise segments. So that's a classic strategic principles we use. So if it is core segment, how do we continue to grow by disrupting ourselves? If it is extending into adjacent markets, how do we do M&A to get a footprint right away?
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask Sujit to comment on this very, very core challenge of CTOs.
Yeah, so Prith, I agree with Suresh and Malik. We have very similar processes and very similar approaches to look at what we invest in terms of innovation and disruptive technologies and more of the core technologies. I recall John Chambers, the former CEO of Cisco, saying that companies go out of business when they do something really, really well for too long. So if you do one thing very well and you keep doing it for too long, you go out of business. So how do you reinvent yourself? We take that to heart. About 80% of our engineering and R&D spend is in new areas, in innovation with new technologies. We do a fair amount of M&A as well. Our M&A is not just focused on acquiring technology. Technology is just one element. Sometimes we do M&A for talent, talent infusion into the company, some talent that we don't currently have. And sometimes we do M&A for market access. That's equally important. As you develop new technologies and try and get into new markets, do you have the market access? So we look at M&A kind of in three buckets, and we do a lot of M&A with startup companies as well. In many cases, it's to bring in new technology into the fold and build a new business, and then build the market access for that business. In this digital transformation space, we have to remember that no one company can do it alone. So equally important to innovation is co-innovation with partners. This year, we started a project with Microsoft. There's a program at Microsoft that's called CEO Co-Innovation Program. And in February of this year, I remember spending some time in Redmond, Washington with Satya and his team, along with my CEO, and we formulated a project with Microsoft to jointly work with Microsoft to build something more innovative for the manufacturing space. So we also work with partners like Microsoft to drive innovation and change, and that's going to be essential for digital transformation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. In fact, in a little sort of my personal world at ANSYS, right? We are a simulation company. We are very core in our solvers on physics solvers like mechanical and fluids and so on. And we are looking at the sort of disruption with AI and machine learning, right? And if you use AI ML, these things have a potential to speed up simulation by factors of 100. And so internally, people, oh my God, if you use AI ML, this will be disruptive to simulation. But the way we are looking at it is, if it's going to be disruptive, we might as well disrupt it ourselves, not wait for a startup to disrupt ANSYS. So in the CTO office, we are actually doing some really interesting work on AI ML applied to simulation. But then what we have found out is actually it does, to train those AI models, it involves a lot more running solvers and so on. We are looking into healthcare as a new vertical. We are looking into the use of digital twins as new opportunities for ANSYS. So yeah, so I think all CTOs have to look at a combination of the core as well as the new ones. Sudhi, since your role is not a product CTO, I'm going to skip on you on this one and move to the next question because I'm watching the time. So next topic that I want to cover is open innovation with sort of academia and startup. And essentially sort of Sujit kind of referred to this, right? That you cannot do this innovation completely on your own, right? So the whole concept of open innovation is how can you bring in innovative ideas from larger companies like as sort of Microsoft, as Sujit mentioned for Rockwell, right? But working with academia and startups. So I'm going to ask you, Sudhi, to comment on how at Stanley Black & Decker, I know you are working with a lot of external partners. So can you talk about open innovation at Stanley Black & Decker?
Yes, uh, sure. So one of the, going back to the, it has a touch point to the question you asked, Preet, which is how are we doing open innovation? Um, the focus for us in global ops for innovation is really this. Even though we don't need to do product innovation like our colleagues just talked about, what we are doing is how do we bring localization, which has become a very active phenomenon in every region of the world because of COVID. How do you actually make that happen? There was such this amazing um, dependency on manufacturing in China and that part of the world. How do you now carefully bring back that capacity as well as those suppliers to near shores, whether it is North America or Europe or in some cases even Southeast Asia? So that requires a lot of innovation if you really think about it, because bringing capacity back into the States at the right cost point is almost near impossible. So you really have to innovate in terms of how you bring that cost point down of hard automation so it becomes competitive. And also equally important is the time to build automation. If you want to bring capacity as it move factories from far corners of China back to your shores. So there is a tremendous amount of innovation that's happening there. All of the things that Sujit's talked about with the model factory in Milwaukee for Rockwell, we're trying to mimic parts pieces of that, but we want to make it more affordable. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening there in terms of localization. And also the other thing that's happening in our space, in the industrial space, is build where we sell, more important, source where we build. And so what we want to do is we want to have the same concept that is applicable for a large capacity area, let's just say in the US. But if you want to now build tools in a smaller capacity demand driven area like Finland, we should be able to now take the same concepts and then move and build capacity in the Nordics area. So those are two important focus areas for innovation, which is what we're doing. And we are working, as Sujit rightly said, we are working with both startups and also large companies. I think it's a really important topic in terms of how we were able to do that, because each archetype, whether it's a large company or a startup, brings its own set of value, be it the culture or be it the speed of innovation. And in the case of large companies, it's the scale and the power of the ecosystem that they actually control. So that is how we are tapping into those pools of innovation. So we work with large companies, Rockwell being one of them, Fanuc being the other, and on and on. And then we also work with Ansys, as you know, Preet. So and we also work with startups, and we now have Techstars, which we actually are sponsoring for several years now. And guess what? The chapter or the cohort for this year is how do you actually drive value for advanced manufacturing? So we're now working with we have selected 12 companies in this cohort that will be dedicated to the business of doing innovation for manufacturing around the topics that I mentioned, localization, and as well as being able to then address resilience, as everyone has talked about. So hopefully that gives you a sense of where the opportunities. And I want to close by saying one important thing. All of the things we're talking about, we also believe we have a responsibility to now open up the lessons learned, as well as some of the artifacts, including solutions, back to the industry. So we actually have a very active engagement with several companies and several communities where we sponsor and share all of the best practices, and even in some cases technology, to help jumpstart the same spirit with small to medium business enterprises and educational institutions, and so on. So that is a critical component of our social purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'm going to move to Malik, but before I ask Malik to comment, I just wanted to kind of frame it. In terms of innovation, right? So universities do really long-term innovation, right? They are doing basic research, applied research, and so on, where sort of what we call the risk of success is very, very high. But then you need to transfer those sort of research results from academia into industry. And in industry, in the past, we used to have those sort of large research labs like Bell Labs and IBM Research and so on, where you could do those kind of academic research. That is sort of going away. And so now industry, they by nature are doing a little less risky, right? So you have to develop those results into from the high risk to the lower risk, and then sort of do the technology transfer. In fact, Malik and I were in a panel discussion yesterday at UC San Diego, where the head of NSF and the head of National Academy of Engineering were in a session where both of us were talking. So Malik, I want you to sort of talk about the concept of innovation with respect to academia and startups, some fantastic programs you are leading at Eriksson.
Absolutely. I think the key success criteria for driving the innovation in academia, translating that into productization, the way we do it is we have almost 1,200 people organization under CTO, which is called Eriksson Research. So when we, in this case, UC San Diego, or even in for that matter, we have IIT Delhi. So in fact, we have established a 5G Innovation Center at IIT Delhi. So we dedicate few researchers work with the faculty members, hand in hand. You know, it becomes an applied research where the faculty members get to understand what problems our customers and our industry is facing over the next 5-10 years. So it is very much problem-driven research. And we co-create, co-invent, publish papers together, then take that innovation into our proof of concept. So we realize a proof of concepts out of that innovation. Then we run those proof of concepts with some early adopter customers to validate that, if that innovation is addressing the problems that customers are facing. So once we get the validation, then we translate that into product roadmap. So there is a nice pipeline and connection between what happens in academia through innovation, translating that into proof of concepts. Once we validate through proof of concept, then probably drive that into open source or 3GPP standards to standardize that, then productize. So that's something worked out extremely well. And you know very well how we collaborated with Stanford and Berkeley during the early days of software-defined networking. So I would say the success criteria for translating innovation from academia into practical implementation in industry is having that tighter connection and collaboration between faculty, students, and the researchers from industry.
So Suresh, would you like to comment on sort of this whole open innovation concept between academia and startups and Honeywell?
Maybe I'll take a practical example that we're dealing right now. COVID hit us, and there is something that we got to bring something within a period of 5 months. But then when we looked at it, I couldn't really get into the detail because of the an NDA that confidentiality that surrounds it. We looked at it, we said it might take 2 years to actually bring in an innovation around the sensor to really get to the market. If I've taken a traditional technology readiness level 1 to 6, and then I get to a product, we went and actually spoke to 2 or 3 major universities who had this 20, 30-year exceptional experience, deeper insights, both in optics and bioscience. We said, we're going to do it together. We're going to do it together. We're going to drive all the best practices in cutting down to a classic technical invention, developing a proof of concept technology and technical white paper, and we're going to have a parallel product development place. to my surprise, this is 5th month in a row. They were pretty challenged, and we have challenged them. And I think we have come to the point that deeper advanced technology that is buried within academia, if an industrial company like us can actually come and mash up and couple our best practices and product development cycle, you might actually see us launching something by June, July. It could have taken 2 to 3 years to really bring in something which is disruptive in nature. So we are actually handpicking some of the core universities across the globe who are very deep in certain expertise. And we are saying we're going to do work with them in tandem. At the same time, we're handpicking some of the startups, again, for the deeper expertise that they have actually built from a core. And we're trying to connect the dot. I think the key area that we're learning, Prith, is speed of innovation is critical. And spotting the best capability and skill sets in the world. And if you can really connect 1 + 1, and if you can create a value of 3, and I think we are changing the model right now to open up.
That is exactly the value of open innovation. Thank you so much. So Sujit, your thoughts on open innovation?
Yeah, let me add another dimension to open innovation. We've talked about working with universities and figuring out a way to take innovation from universities jointly with industry and bringing it into some innovative products. There is another model that has evolved, which is in manufacturing, we have institutes that are public-private partnerships. These institutes, over a dozen in the United States, are funded by the government, and they are co-funded by industry. They're industry-driven, so they're focused on problems that industry defines. And they're solving industry problems along with universities, startups, and of course, the industry. So these institutes, let me give you one example. There is an institute that's based out of New Hampshire that's working on regenerative medicine, which means growing human organs, human tissue. And this is new and revolutionary. Today, this is done in labs, and it's not scalable. You can grow a human organ like a heart. Starting with a pig's heart, you can grow a human heart, but you can't scale it. It takes forever to scale it. So now this institute is focused on scaling regenerative medicine, and Rockwell is providing some innovative controls and innovative automation, a lot of software for doing that. So you have a problem that's well-defined. You've got universities engaged with a lot of cutting-edge research. You've got startups, you've got the industry engaged. So now that you have a problem to focus on, and you've got a little bit of a stimulus from the government, by the way, only supports a third of the funding. It's several $100 million, but a third is provided by the government. The rest is provided by the industry. So these institutes, whether you take those in the US or Fraunhofer institutes in Germany, they are great examples of public-private partnerships that can accelerate innovation from universities, from startups, and from companies by focusing on real problems that are cutting edge and coming up with solutions that can be transferred into use pretty quickly.
Thank you, Sujit. That was great. So now the next question is slightly tricky, and you may or may not be willing to give an answer to this, but I want to ask you anyway. So when you talk about disruptions, right? So you have sort of Kodak, right? Again, going back to the Kodak example, right? They knew of digital imaging, yet they held on to the analog printing, cash cow business. Nokia knew of digital cellular technology, but they held on to their analog cell phone business, right? So as you look at your businesses, do you see a disruption from a startup that could be really impactful to your business? And do you want to identify such a technology or a startup that, if it is successful, could be really potentially bad? So I will volunteer myself, and so then you identify that and you say, so what are you going to do about it, right? So in a way, AI, machine learning, if it is truly successful, could be disruptive to ANSYS, right? Because ANSYS, we are in the simulation business. Our simulations, they do detailed physics. They are obviously, but they take a long time. And the more time it runs, right? I mean, we thank you, Suresh at Honeywell, right? You need 1,000 copies of Ansys Mechanical. If those things, instead of taking 1,000 hours, run in 1 minute, it is disruptive to our business, right? So AI/ML has a potential to be disruptive if it can really run blazing fast and so on. So, but rather than say, oh my God, let me just not look at it, we ourselves at Ansys in the city office are looking at AI/ML applied to simulation, but we are also watching startups such as Neural Concepts, right? It's a startup in Switzerland who's trying to literally disrupt us. So we are partnering with the startup, and so with that, so I essentially opened up an example, right? Can each of you can ignore it, but if you would like to kind of about, here is a technology and a startup that if successful would be go disrupt us. Who would like to go first?
Preet, I'll be happy to go first. For diversified companies like Rockwell Automation, and I'm assuming this is probably true for Honeywell, Eriksson, and Stanley Black & Decker, one innovation from a startup won't disrupt the entire business. It can disrupt a segment of the business. But the disruptor that is front and center for most companies is software-driven everything. As I think we heard from Suresh and Malik, every company is trying to transform itself to embrace more software. I'll give you an example outside of Rockwell, Domino's Pizza. Would you think of Domino's Pizza as a pizza company or a software company? Today, Domino's is investing a whole lot more money in software infrastructure than in pizza. Because if you order from Domino's, you can electronically place your order, you can track your order, they will text you when the pizza is ready, you can watch how your pizza is being made. So software is disrupting many traditional businesses. If we ignore this, if Domino's ignores software and continues to make the best pizza even better and continually improves pizza, they're going to go out of business. So it's the same with our business. Software is a major disruptor. And our company is building up software talent, building up partnerships. I spoke about Microsoft. We work with PTC and other software companies. We work with Ansys. We look at Ansys as a software company. So the partnerships in the software space, rapidly ramping up capabilities in software, that's the biggest threat to a lot of traditional companies, including ours.
Fantastic.
And I can go next to kind of pick up on what Sujit said. In our case, obviously, I have established that my focus is more on the manufacturing side. That said, we're doing some innovation in terms of how we drive continuous improvement, which is a breakthrough innovation, I would call it, not just for us, but for the industry. So the idea is not only will this breakthrough innovation serve our company, but also be able to maybe help other companies when we commercialize it. So we've been working on this, in fact, fast-tracked it during COVID times. But along the lines, in this process, we found out that there are some startups that can really help or compete with us. So what we did was we actually changed the design of this platform to accommodate a lot of these software companies. And what would have been a threat for us is now an asset, because now we use these companies that is, in our case, we actually hunt for leaks. So we have AI hunting for leaks of opportunity. And so now what we've done is we've changed the design. So we don't have to create all the hunting algorithms. Instead, what we can now do is make sure that if there's another company that can do the same, we can accommodate this. And now we can, in fact, drive speed and variety of algorithms to drive both cost and speed innovation. So this took a little bit of a different mindset, but we did. But of course, we had the advantage that it was a brand new platform. So just a little bit of context and contrast what Sujit was saying.
Fantastic. Malik, Suresh.
I'll take a different angle. I'll just say, as a CTO, I'm betting on 5 key technology. That means I'm watching my competition, I'm watching startups, I'm watching everybody. One is advanced sensing. Everything is getting miniaturized, connected, intelligent. I need the best sensor in the world. If I get it any part of the world, any part of universities, I'm going and partnering with them. Second, I think Preet talked about it, any models around AI analytics and software model that can bring in intelligence. And I think I'm looking at it every single day. Third, advanced compute and connectivity. We're working with Eriksson and Qualcomm and others from 5G. And we're also talking about quantum ourselves. And then anybody who can bring in quantum advanced compute infrastructure, I'm going to partner with them. Fourth is my energy, materials, and sustainability. Anybody who can bring in material innovation with nanoparticle, and whether it's coming from university startups, I'm willing to co-innovate with them. Fifth, the last one, autonomous systems. Either I'm building robotic systems or unmanned air taxis. I need all kinds of new technology to really beef up. So those 5 technology would drive my co-innovation framework, and we will shamelessly go and partner to really drive, because at the end of the day, the value should be for our customers.
Absolutely. Great. I like the way you kind of pivoted. And actually, this is what I was looking for. So that's fantastic. Malik?
I think Suresh summarized it very well. I would add one extra dimension to it from connectivity networking point of view, right? As we move towards 6G with terahertz, laws of physics, you need to have better coverage. That means densification, we call it as more and more small cells. So we are going to see more densification, disaggregation in terms of network, and distribution. So I think that's going to cause disruption, right? Densification, network disaggregation, and distribution of the cloud resources across. So we are going to look at these 3Ds impact and see where the disruption is and how we can not only do M&A, but also co-innovate with the players to drive that system level view.
Thank you. So now let us talk about a disruption that is all around us, COVID-19. COVID-19 has had us, all of us, think differently about the way we work, the way we live, we collaborate, and so on. So how has your company adjusted to COVID-19? Let me start with you, Suresh.
Adjusted is, I don't know how to handle that. We've been wanting to run a business and wanting to serve our customers just like any other day, prior to a pandemic. So it's been a challenging one. I think we all had a discussion yesterday at town hall. We actually thanked each and every member in our manufacturing base, because they worked every single day during the last 7 months, putting their safety and health. And I think that's happened across the globe, across the world, from many different industries. But we used this opportunity. We said crisis opens up a new type of innovation. So we actually suddenly in the last 6 months came up with 3 or 4 major innovation. Buildings, we called it as healthy building, brought in new kind of innovation around UVC cleansing, contact tracing, a new sort of software. We call it a healthy building, healthy cabin, healthy plant, and healthy distribution center. For the first time, the industry took seriously remote operation, remote management, and remote services. So there was a series of offering. We went back and told our customers, we care for your business, we care for your assets, we care for your end customers. I think that went very, very well. The other way that we are looking at it is 3 fundamental distinct technology foundation that will change the innovation angle, which I call detect and protect and really remote operation. Detect is a new kind of sensors we need during this pandemic, post-pandemic. We're going to have more such things in the future. Detect is we need to have protecting ourselves, protecting the humanity, individuals. So you're going to see a lot more material innovation right there. And then the last thing is operate. And operate is, I think every one of you in our industry 4.0, from Malik's business to Sudhi's business to Sujit's business and Preet, you, is all about getting this digital technology, preparing future manufacturing distribution center and operations to say we can run without human beings or less human beings. How do we do so? This is the time. It's no more a proof of concept and let's really give a try. It is a necessity for the future. So these are the three fundamental shifts in our innovation angle that we are prioritizing ourselves.
Fantastic. Actually, I mean, since you mentioned that, I just wanted to share what has happened to at ANSYS, right? At ANSYS, our simulation software typically runs on premise, right? At Honeywell or at Eriksson and so on, right? On the workstation sitting inside the engineer's desk. Now, since the engineers cannot go to their offices, what happens, right? So we had been talking about moving our ANSYS simulation to the cloud for a long time. Because of the pandemic, that movement to the cloud got really accelerated. It's like people knew of online retail, but because they could go to the shopping mall, they did not actually use Amazon in the past. But now pandemic has accelerated the move to Amazon online retail, right? In a way, for us, simulation has moved to the cloud faster than it would have normally moved. So that's kind of a very interesting thing of the pandemic. And once people start using the cloud, start using collaboration tools and so on, working from home, I think they're not going to go back. So it's literally a significant disruption that was forced by the pandemic. When it goes back, I mean, the software companies, actually the employees, they're saying, hey, you know what? You can actually work from home permanently, not just for the short term. So let me go to Sudhi, right? You are the sort of CTO of global ops. I mean, what could be more disruptive than operations, right? At a company like Stanley Black & Decker. So how has the COVID-19 impacted you?
Along similar lines that Suresh mentioned, I think the first thing that I can think of is how remote operations and not just operations, but being able to optimize your operations so now you can get even more efficient has been fast tracked. So now we have several plants that are open to technology to get into their factories, while previously they were not. So that I think is a major positive thing for operations, because now you can bring in expertise from anywhere in the globe to solve some vexing problems that we would not have been able to, right? And now keep in mind, it doesn't have to be just your own employees, because of some of the things that's happening with exchanges, et cetera. Now we can get expertise to solve and maintain assets that are really old or assets that are really complex, et cetera. So that really opened up an opportunity, and in fact has slowly started accelerating. I don't think I would use the word fast track, but for sure it has accelerated. But on a broader note for our company, this is pretty profound, including manufacturing. There's a big war on talent. We know that. So now what has exposed in over the last 7 months is the fact that now we are open to talking about talent anywhere in the world. It's no longer a deterrent. So the way we can source talent and the speed with which we can source talent is just incredibly now improved. And so even the way we look at technology, the way we look at some of the projects that we want to engage on, not again from an operations standpoint, but in general as a product company, is dramatically different. So I bet it's a common phenomenon for a lot of companies in the world, but I think this is presented tremendous opportunities for people in general and companies therefore.
Fantastic. So I'm watching the time, and I really want to get to one more question. So I'm going to not move on to the next question before allowing every panelist to speak on every topic. And that is relevance to India, right? So I don't know if how many of you attended Prime Minister Modi's remarks in the morning, but it was just incredible. The way I was so impressed with the Prime Minister and his introductions, right? And we all know that he's been start talking about the plans of making India, making it itself, right? And he kind of highlighted some key technologies. You guys at IITs, right? You are the innovators. You can innovate on technologies like solar technologies, like pharma, healthcare technologies, like battery technology, and so on. There's just so much information. Yet, and then because of the pandemic, right? There's an increasing sort of a move towards moving outsourcing from other countries into India and so on. So there's an opportunity for India. So the relevance of this whole discussion that we had to India, not just the pandemic, but just the whole, how you, I think we talked about again. So I'm going to start with you, Malik, and then go to to Suresh, and then pretty soon we'll run out of time. So Malik, talk about the relevance to India and maybe stick in sort of how IITs can contribute in their journey.
Absolutely. So, for example, we are working with IIT Delhi on.
And speak quickly so that Suresh can also say. Okay.
Yes, yes. IIT Delhi, we are doing a co-innovation center there to extend 5G into smart manufacturing, smart farming, and things like that. So I think these IITs can become innovation centers to bring all the ecosystem players to extend that, remote operations with the connectivity, compute, and many other ecosystem players. So they can get into that innovation centers for realizing digital India.
Wonderful.
Preet, we have 30% of our global engineering is out of India. 30%. Just keep that in mind. They are innovating for globe, aircraft of future, for plant and commercial building and supply chain. We're doing everything else. We are slowly building our localization strategy, driving our sourcing and manufacturing locally. The key challenge for Honeywell and for the ecosystem in India is innovating for that market. I think we know that we're trying to structure the market by saying mass, mid-segment, different like of knockout solution. But I think we need to come together to say India innovation is not it's not something a challenging one. But I think the key is to innovate for that market, for the price point, for the value we can generate. That's our future. And I think anybody, IITs, anyone who wants to work with us, we would love to co-innovate right there, just like we gave enough example for the global markets.
Fantastic.
If you don't mind, can I add one sentence from my side?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so actually what we're doing is contributing to Make in India movement. Going back to my previous comment about moving capacity away from China and moving our supplier base away from China. Not only are we moving it to North America, we're moving it to India. So they're a direct beneficiary of the trend that has set in. So we've actually enhanced our plant in Pune. We're building more factories, and we're also moving into, we are enabled several suppliers in the India region. So more to come on that. Very exciting, very relevant to what Prime Minister Modi has been talking about.
Sujit, 30 seconds on India.
Yes, I think it's exciting. I think I would like to see the IITs stimulate more of an ecosystem of startups. Wherever there's an IIT, there should be a very vibrant ecosystem of startups that would be symbiotic with the IIT community, whether it's students or professors. And they should be driving the next generation digital technologies with some help from the government. So that would be my point for growing the influence of IITs in emerging in new technologies.
Thank you, Sujit. So by leveraging the power of digital technologies, visionary companies like Rockwell, Honeywell, Stanley, Black & Decker, and Eriksson are able to define the future and the direction of entire industries. The world needs innovation. We all know this, and now more than ever. At Pan IIT 2020, this conference, we've got more than 15,000 attendees from the global community, executives, designers, analysts, who've all come together to inspire each other with stories of agility, innovation, and determination. I thank all the panelists for a truly, truly amazing panel. I just cannot, I know you are all super busy, but for you all to spend time from your busy schedule to share your insights with all of us at IIT, we thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.
Sure. Thank you.
Bye.